From what I've seen, 2019 has been the year of retreading old ground. Past formulas from well-established franchises have been reinvented with smart and intuitive designs. Some of my favorite franchises have returned, and the good ones have spruced up their old-fashioned formulas. Despite most of my initial hype being dedicated to Kingdom Hearts 3 at the start of the year, I was massively disappointed by its awful release. I found it to be utterly disappointing and terrible. It's the type of game that made me lose interest in the series moving forward. Past that massive Nomura failure, 2019 is a year that I'm genuinely fond of. Every other title I was looking forward to ended up appealing to me in one way or another. As a whole, 2019 is certainly one of my favorite years for gaming throughout this decade, despite the existence of Kingdom Hearts 3. I have to admit, I haven't been playing many older games this year, so there weren't many contenders in this category. However, Celeste is undoubtedly a gem regardless of what it's up against. It's an indie platformer that focuses on difficulty, strong level design, and a surprisingly involving storyline. I missed it back in 2018, and I'm glad that I finally got the time to sit down and play it this year. There's something really special in how it incorporates some of the story into its mechanics that got me particularly engaged during the climax of the game. Without a doubt, Nocturne is a game I'd love to have put in my top 5. However, it's not really a fully fleshed out game. Rather, it's more of a proof of concept. Nocturne throws the player into an alien machine and expects them to eventually figure out how to perfectly operate it. The game avoids the typical hand-holding hijinks you'd expect in titles released in the modern day. In fact, it tries and succeeds in nudging the player in the right direction rather than explicitly telling them how to play. The only issue with Nocturne is the fact that the game doesn't have much depth. Once the player learns how to operate the machinery, reaching the end is somewhat of a cakewalk. A more in-depth sequel would definitely be the type of game I'd look forward to in the future, but for now, I'll just have to leave Nocturne as an honorable mention. Bloodstained is Igarashi's return to the Castlevania formula. It's as simple as that. Sure, there are new bells and whistles, but the core experience is mostly unchanged. After all these years since the outstanding Order of Ecclesia, I'm glad to finally have another genuine Castlevania game. We all know Konami's poor treatment of its franchises, and here's another example of a successful Kickstarter project filling a gap left by a major company. Here's to hoping that this happens to Silent Hill as well, but I'll hold my breath on that. Despite the occasional technical issue, Bloodstained captures what made past Igavanias great, while carefully tweaking the formula in small, subtle ways. Admittedly, my list is full of retreads with the exception of Knights and Bikes. It's an interesting co-op title centered on friendship and cooperation with some inspiration from the Goonies. The story managed to get me hooked from the very beginning with its smart writing, and kept me invested over time with the heavy focus on character interaction between the two main characters. Mechanically, the game has inspiration from the co-op-centric Secret of Mana, and it shows. It has a strong blend of combat and puzzle gameplay that manages to strike a good balance. Knights and Bikes is one of the few fresh games from 2019 that really left me impressed. As a spin-off of the Yakuza franchise, Judgment puts a twist on the familiar Kamurocho setting. With a brand new cast, Judgment tries and succeeds in providing a unique take on what Yakuza previously established. The narrative manages to deliver a more investigative feel that highlights how Yagami, the new protagonist, tackles his issues. The cast is memorable, and there's a strong amount of narrative intrigue that effectively builds up over the course of the game. Though predictable at times, Judgment uses the Yakuza structure to provide a fully fleshed detective drama that kept me invested from beginning to end. Beyond just being Pokemon on a console, Pokemon Sword manages to streamline a dated formula with overwhelming success. Along with new and interesting Pokemon to play with, the game delivers a fresh experience in a franchise that often refuses to change. Pokemon Sword improves on many core design flaws that often held the games back in terms of quality of life. Along with a more polished RPG experience, There's a new, major feature known as the Wild Area. It introduces a sort of open-world adventure that gives us a glimpse at future possibilities, while delivering a brand new type of Pokemon catching experience. Pokemon Sword has somehow managed to make the ancient Pokemon formula even more addictive and easier to get into. With the inconsistent track record of the series, I had my concerns with the latest release. Regardless, I was absolutely excited once I saw the E3 announcement of Devil May Cry 5 last year. Once it came out, I realized that Devil May Cry 5 is exactly the kind of game that I've been waiting for ever since I finished the groundbreaking third title. It fulfilled almost everything I wanted from a Devil May Cry game, and by the time I finished, I knew it was my favorite game this year. Old systems have been streamlined and polished to provide a greater focus on action and skill. The levels are now fully dedicated to throwing enemies at the player rather than padding them out with poor puzzles and platforming. Devil May Cry 5 has so much to offer, and it's an absolute joy to play through. It easily earns the Game of the Year. So there's my Game of the Year list for 2019. Every game on the list besides Bloodstained has a video review for it, and I'll add the links to them down in the description. Every game besides Celeste and Devil May Cry 5 has a written review up on DarkStation that I'll also add to the description. Anyway, this year was great. Though it's clear that next year will most likely be even better, any year with a top tier Devil May Cry is a good year nonetheless. Let me know what your Game of the Year list is by leaving a comment. Thanks for watching this video on my Game of the Year list. The original list was written for DarkStation. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. If you want some more, here are some of my other videos the algorithm thinks you might like. Anyway, I'll see you all next time when I give you a meticulous breakdown of the greatest game of all time, Hello Kitty Roller Rescue.